We're back live from the LinkedIn Hub, and we have with us Lynn, who is Chief Insight Officer at Dentsu Aegis now. And Michelle, you and I were chatting, and I love this very different perspective, which is the research and insight perspective, which is the people, kind of the conscience, as we were saying. And I think that that's really interesting, because one of the things we were thinking about was relevance, and you had a very interesting, perspective on relevance. Everybody's looking for relevance, say relevance, scaling relevance, and everything. So let's talk a little bit about that first.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a new concept. I think we used to talk about it as advertising to the interested, but because of the limitations in media back then, like half of your investment was wasted. So I think we have a lot of opportunity, and probably this time more than any other in history, it's the best time to be able to deliver amazing experiences to consumers. I think when it comes to relevance, I think because we have so much data and it's not always used the right way, you can sometimes border on creepy by knowing too much about a consumer. And I did some work recently on millennials. Even the definition of relevance varied depending on the type of person you were and the type of values you had, your motivations and your attitude. So I think relevance can be a double-edged sword. And I know we were talking about scaling relevance and how do we do that. And I know that makes sense from an investment perspective, but from the people, from the consumer perspective, I think sometimes maybe it's better to be on target with thousands rather than annoying millions of people with being relevant. Relevancy needs to be refreshed. Like, relevance is of the moment, and it's very difficult to do that.
That's really interesting. And you brought up millennials, and we've spoken a couple different times about millennials and how we love to generalize about all millennials, and then we go, oh no, wait a minute, those things are true, but then there's also so much this and that. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you're doing in understanding millennials and being able, obviously, to advertise better to millennials.
Yeah, I mean, I guess over the past 10 years, there's been lots of questions about millennials, and every day those questions increase, which I just think is hilarious because they're so overanalyzed that you think you know everything. What we realized was that because we read so much about millennials, that they're sort of the stereotype of a millennial that even if you closed your eyes right now and you thought about millennials, you would
oh my gosh, I could tell you 6 different things.
Exactly, like oversharing and connected all the time and self-obsessed and entitled. The truth of the matter is that that's only a small percentage of who they are. And when we looked at the size of millennials in the US alone, 85 million. And we wanted to put that in perspective. And what we saw was that if US millennials were their own country, they'd be the 15th most populous country in the world. Bigger than the population of the UK, bigger than France, and bigger than Germany. So it's really hurting us that we're talking about all millennials as if they're one group.
Right, because you'd never say, it's interesting when you put it in perspective like that, because you'd never say all the French.
No, you would never do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially the French. They
right,
like
especially
that.
the French. And I think millennials probably don't as well.
Right, and I think we've been seeing a negative halo back onto some of the biggest brands in the US and the world who are really suffering and struggling to remain relevant with millennials. And we think that we have the data, we have the insight, but we're not going deep enough to make those connections and connect those dots for marketers.
I think another thing, you being the people person, or the person thinking about the people, versus, it's so different when I sit down with tech people. It's like it's very different even tone.
Right.
So you thinking about that is the mobile experience. We've talked about the mobile experience. Mobile's not going anywhere. It's growing, and everybody wants to make the relevant mobile experience, the great balance with not being too intrusive in the mobile experience. So you also think that it's a very kind of tricky, fine line, right?
Yes. I mean, what I'd like to see is how media and technology and creative are working together to break down the silos to deliver a better experience on mobile. But we know that mobile is so intimate. There's all the stats about people sleeping with it on their night table or talking to it more than your spouse or whoever. But as a result, you don't want to annoy people with a bad experience. Years ago, we used to say that the first penny of any marketing budget should go into search, and I would argue now that not only marketing, but any investment that a company is making, a disproportionate amount of investment should go into that mobile experience, because it's really filling that gap between the virtual world and the physical experience. It's so powerful, and even me as a consumer, focus group of one, I know that I've had pretty bad experiences with advertising on mobile. whether it was too disruptive or the technology wasn't there. But we know that it exists. The technology is out there. All the tech companies you're talking about, I don't think that there's really an excuse for a bad mobile experience these days.
And another thing you were saying is it's almost like you only have one chance. You know, like if you lose the consumer with the mobile experience, I don't think you can get that back.
It's really hard. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. Like if there's a commercial break that's too long, you're not mad at the TV.
No.
And you're really not even mad at the network.
You're not mad at Game of
Right?
Thrones.
No, you're not mad at, you're not. But, if you have a bad mobile experience, like there's so many options out there that you might not go back to that retailer. You might not go back to that website, to that mobile site.
That's very interesting. Another thing also is custom content. I've been speaking to a lot of people about custom content and the importance of custom content, and yet people will say that they're not being as effective at it strategically as they would like to be. And I know you have a different perspective also, or you think that they're not approaching it, or there's a better way to approach it, I should say.
Way to approach it. I mean, content is so important. I mean, it can be so engaging and entertaining, and people are searching for it. We know that. But it was pointed out to me recently that most content starts with an idea. It's not grounded in a consumer insight. Which we've made these mistakes before. We know that that's the wrong thing to do. We have so much data, so much insight on people that content should grow out of that insight. It shouldn't start from the top down. It should really be a bottom-up perspective, whether you're curating it or creating it.
So thinking of that, when was the last time you saw something, or if you could think of a few brands that you think got it right, like really thought insightfully about people before they created content and before they...
This might be an obvious one, but I think Disney is doing a fabulous job with consistency. Omnichannel is so important, and we know that there's statistics around as you increase touch points, how your likelihood of increased transaction happens. Disney is doing a fabulous job of that consistency across all their channels, and they're also bringing technology into the park to make that experience for children or parents or families or whomever much more seamless. Whether it's RFID bands or giving them something to do if they're waiting in long lines. I think that they're doing a wonderful job. The other one that comes to mind is MasterCard. I think that they've done a wonderful job of enabling experiences for consumers, just by nature of who they are, but also through the insight that they have and the work that they've done, knowing that they're what's standing between themselves and something that somebody wants and loves. And they're doing a lot to make sure that that experience is doing well. And I would say just payment companies in general, the way that they're embracing contextual commerce. I'm hoping by the holidays that we see more buy now buttons, so they're taking the friction out of the purchase process. So, how many times have you been frustrated that you're redirected? You can't just buy something on your mobile. You have to go to a website. So maybe less redirection and more buy now.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much, Michelle. Good luck with everything. And I know you're speaking quite a bit tonight. So good luck with that.
Thank you so much.